Hey everyone! Last episode was fun, but there was certainly a little bit of confusion I'd like to clear up. Kurama had used the same jutsu to get around several times. It's a space-time jutsu similar to the Flying Raijin. In both of Naruto's episodes, Kurama used it to move Naruto elsewhere. The ground turning to liquid wasn't literal, it was just an attempt to describe that the portal became like part of the ground that Naruto could fall through. That's all I'll say on that for now. A few people seemed legit confused whether it was original Naruto, like canon Naruto talking to rewrite Naruto, but I simply don't have any rewrite Naruto art of him smiling and being happy-go-lucky, so I had to use canon Naruto art. Other than that, we've reached the very last of the official timeskip content. We'll have a climax to all this Minato stuff that's building up after this, but there will be no more memories after this. Technically, we'll be officially stepping into the Shippuden content, if you will. However, unlike the structure of canon Naruto, my Shippuden stuff will not be 5 times longer than pre-timeskip. Realistically, I'd say I have 3 arcs left before the end of the rewrite, maybe 4? It's difficult to tell right now. That might sound scary, but that'll probably end up being like another year's worth of episodes at this rate. Anyway, just like last week, I have an enormous amount of content I'm trying to shove into a smaller time frame, so we'd better get started. On with the show. Day 3. Following their secret meeting, Sakura was intent on finding out as much as she could from the other superiors in the village. She just needed to know if any of them had picked up on weird activity with the Hokage, or if he had somehow tricked them all into a false sense of security. Given the lacking Anbu presence in the village, and even the lacking Jonin population, Sakura was worried for the actual strength of the village. Other than the major clans of the village, who else were present to protect it? She was glad to have reunited with Naruto, but obviously Ino was the one she sought most for so many reasons. With their reunion, Sakura felt the same familiarity she had felt in her time away, and had figured out the puzzle to her own mission. Meanwhile, though, without any Jonin to probe for information, and not belonging to a recognized clan herself, Sakura's first target was Lady Tsunade. She had obviously learned alongside Shino and Choji about Kurenai's passing at the hospital, as well as, Jiraiya's coma. She wondered if she should give the old Sannin a visit, in place of his apparently past visitors. Sakura passed Jiraiya's room before reaching Tsunade's office, and decided to visit him first. Maybe she'd fluff his pillow, or adjust the blinds for light, to make sure the blanket was properly covering him. Entering the room, he was in the same position as when she had last been here. From beneath the blanket, several IVs fed, obviously to keep him in otherwise good health. Eyes softening, Sakura pulls a stool close and decides to simply sit in silence for a while. To think that in all this time she and the rest had been away, Jiraiya had been like this. She can even tell in his face that he's lost weight, and he's noticeably pale. He's by no means a skeleton, but he certainly lost a lot of the musculature he used to have. This hospital was a source of bad news for Sakura, considering the news of Kurenai, her teacher in Genjutsu, passing, as well as Jiraiya, her other teacher in Fuinjutsu, was in a coma. But all hope was not yet lost. Standing and leaning over Jiraiya, Sakura glanced quickly behind before touching one hand against her own chest and feeling her chakra swirl to life before performing several hand seals. These seals incorporated tiger, snake, and rat, common to most medical ninjutsu, but beyond that, also emphasized the dragon seal numerous times. Becoming somewhat self-aware as Sakura continued to craft the jutsu, she looked down at her hands and experienced a slight bewilderment, almost an out-of-body experience, at her quick, deliberate, and precise actions. Finishing the jutsu, she gently pressed her hands together before holding her right hand to her chest and hovering her left hand over Jiraiya's forehead. Unlike what she assumed the Yamanaka clan could do, Sakura could not see into Jiraiya's mind. It was like picking a lock, she had to go by feel and sensation. Grumbling audibly a few times, Sakura found trouble in maintaining her concentration for such a prolonged time. After all, Lord Jiraiya's head was like a three-dimensional maze. Even once she solved one puzzle, another layer opened up and another puzzle presented itself. And these weren't literally physical puzzles, simply the required layers she had to get through. She figured it was the same with any mind, experienced or otherwise. "Let him die," a voice echoed like the shadow of a whisper, and Sakura wondered if it was a protective seal on Jiraiya creating the voice. "He was weak to allow this to happen," another voice whispered, threatening to shake Sakura's concentration, but she held true. "Is he worth saving?" Yet another voice whispered, oddly less sinister than the first two. The color suddenly drains from Sakura's face as her jutsu relinquishes and she crumples to the ground. In the same motion, color returns to Jiraiya's face, and his eyes slowly open. Groaning, Jiraiya attempts to roll onto his side and look down at Sakura, but his eyes lift elsewhere and he collapses, tired already. Rushing to Sakura's side and making sure she's okay, Tsunade gasps, "How did you do this?" The one thing Sakura most hoped for was word to be sent to Konoha that she had survived the incident at Iwa, but the man who greeted her as she explored the turtle's vast wilderness told her that birds constantly lose their way when sent to and from that turtle. Not to mention this was a location meant to be kept hidden no matter what. This man was Motoi, a ninja of the Land of Lightning and a designated caretaker for Genbu, the island turtle. He was a strict, by-the-books man, and while he didn't kick Sakura off the island entirely, he also forced her to stay in the cabin she'd woken up in until a ferryman came to drop supplies off. These constant rules, however, were consistently shook loose by the island's other current denizen, Killer Bee, who was not at all shy in introducing himself as the Cloud's Jinchuriki. Such revealed secrets enraged Motoi, but as lame as Killer Bee acted in Motoi's presence, the latter ultimately let Bee do whatever he wanted to do anyway. The only absolute rule that Motoi refused to budge on was that Killer Bee wasn't allowed to leave the island. And so the cabin grounding was quickly dismissed because Bee was just too excited to have a visitor, only for them to remain locked up the whole time. Motoi told him that he wasn't to try to bring her to the falls, but that they could go anywhere else on the island. With no frame of reference, Sakura was completely fine with, frankly, anywhere they went. However, unlike Ino and Naruto, Killer Bee had an overbearing personality that was difficult to take in. He kept insisting on rapping everything he said to Sakura, and she couldn't tell if he was aware of how cheesy his lines were. It was a constant mental struggle with whether she was supposed to take him totally seriously or act like it was a joke the way he was talking. Also, to Motoi's dismay, Bee explained to Sakura that the island was a sacred place, most notably for the Land of Lightning's Jinchuriki, past and present. On their tour around the island, Sakura takes note of all the enormous wild beasts, fish, and even bugs. Everything that wasn't human here was gigantic, and at their very first sight of Sakura, felt an inexhaustible need to challenge her. Luckily, in the presence of Killer Bee, Sakura was totally safe from them. As each charged towards her, they seemed to realize Killer Bee was right there, and would slide to a stop before turning and walking away as if nothing had even happened. Motoi told Sakura too that the supply ferry rarely comes here since they had to wait for the turtle to swim around the country's north side, which would take at least a year based on where they were. So unless she wanted to take a chance at running across the water like she had to get here, Sakura was stuck. This news only lit a greater fire in Killer Bee's eyes, and he leapt at the chance at showing Sakura what he did for fun around here. Up until now, the games were kind of boring. He had played King of the Hill with the beasts of the jungle and won enough times that they didn't even want to play with him anymore. But with Sakura around, surely they'd leap at the opportunity of a different opponent. Not sure she quite liked the idea of being bait for all the beasts to charge, Sakura also realized she had to make the most of her time locked away upon this turtle. Add to the many beasties that Sakura was being strong-armed into learning how to fight, Killer Bee was also starting his stuff as well. She found him using his beast with ease, or rather, his beast volunteering any help that he requested. Clearly, there must have been a constant mental communication occurring between the two, as Bee seamlessly switched between bestial and human techniques. Sakura decided now might be a good time to learn from a master she might be able to convey to Ino and Naruto. Through her many conversations with Bee, Sakura learned that the tailed beasts are essentially archives of jutsu. When they take on their full form, they can perform multiple jutsu together at the same time, and obviously without any hand seals. He thinks, though he's not sure, that this has something to do with their connection to the Sage of Six Paths, who apparently knew all jutsu. Begrudgingly, Motoi eventually agrees to let Sakura sit at the Falls of Truth, though she still doesn't know what that is. However, he insists that it is in fact sacrilege for anyone other than a Jinchuriki to enter the falls upon finishing the first stage. Put into white robes for the privilege, Motoi tells her that it's just as well anyway, since that stinky jacket needed to be done away with. Stopping him in his tracks, Sakura tells him that he can't destroy that jacket. She's holding it for someone. Shrugging with indifference, Motoi agrees, but that it cannot go with her to the falls. There's more reason than simply tradition that ninja cannot normally sit at the falls for meditation. Motoi tells Sakura that the falls are special and create a huge, massive drain of chakra on anyone who meditates in front of them. Typically speaking, only Jinchuriki can survive the process. However, through both Motoi and Killer Bee's observations, Sakura is so efficient with her chakra use that they think she'll be able to make it through the process, despite having nearly exponentially less chakra. It was only after Sakura did intense physical exercise and training with the beasts on the island, and also periodically opposite Bee himself, that she trained her system to be hardy enough to take on this challenge. Sitting at the small island as instructed, Sakura closed her eyes and invited peace to greet her. That peace was receiving a heavy shove that rocked her to the ground and onto her elbow to look up at the perpetrator. Except her perpetrator was... her? This other version of her looked the exact same, except that she had a mark on her forehead that clearly reads, Inner Sakura. I guess I should be Outer Sakura now, huh? She muses, looking up as if she could see her own forehead. It would be better that way for both our sakes anyway. What's going on? Sakura asks, looking at her mirror. You stupid! Outer Sakura accuses, pointing a finger at Sakura. Spending all your time thinking about jutsu and all that boring stuff? As opposed to... Sakura wonders, straightening. Are you blind? Other Sakura asks, bewildered. You were teamed up with some weirdos to begin with, but fate was on our side for once, and we got reteamed with Naruto. They weren't weirdos, Sakura defended Choji and Shino. Their skills were just unique. No, they were weirdos, other Sakura insisted defiantly. That whole time, you could have been teamed with Neji or Sasuke. What dreamboats! Dreamboats? Sakura chuckled at the word, raising an eyebrow at this far more sporadic version of herself. And Naruto! Oh, he has his qualities, Outer Sakura muttered, seemingly getting lost in her own mumblings. Yes, Naruto is definitely very strong, especially once he gets a better hold of the fox, Sakura agreed, finally understanding at least something that her other half is gushing about. Are you an emotional idiot? Other Sakura asked, perturbed by Sakura's return to business. Don't you think he's a cutie? The way he offered that jacket just to help keep you warm? Following this, Outer Sakura squealed in a high, shrill voice that Sakura could not believe she was even capable of. Look, I've got no time for boys, Sakura shook her head. I need to get stronger so I can get back and find Ino. Ino's fine. She's got a gigantic monster inside of her, Outer Sakura complained. If you let your chance slip up with Naruto, you'll never get married. What? Sakura asked again, perplexed that this other part of her was apparently so obsessed with boys. She didn't even realize this was the case inside of her, even to the point of foregoing training and studying to gush about them. Shaking her head of the thought process, Sakura insisted to herself that she needed to remain focused. If you never chillax and spend some time with cute boys, you'll get wrinkles before you're even a jonin, Outer Sakura proclaimed, again with a finger in Sakura's face. Feeling her face with a hand, as if she believed her, Sakura caught herself and grumbled impatience at this previously buried inner personality. Look, this place is a great opportunity to train and get stronger than ever. Killer Bee's already helped me with taijutsu, ninjutsu, and even genjutsu, Sakura argued. Pfft, stronger? Outer Sakura scoffed. I've watched everything you've done, you know. Yeah, and it was pretty good, Sakura answered defensively, annoyed at Outer Sakura's inference of weakness. No, you're not listening to me. I was there for everything, Outer Sakura repeated with emphasis. You happen to get paired with the best genjutsu user in the village, and only thanks to that were you able to defeat the Hell Scroll during the tuning exams. And do you really think that you're smarter than Shikamaru to beat him in the preliminaries? Or stronger than Neji to best him, at least for a little while, in the final phase? If Lord Hokage hadn't resumed the fight, you'd have proceeded in the competition with stolen valor. You didn't deserve the Chunin promotion with that minimalist showing. If you trained properly with Lord Jiraiya, you could use your fists and beat the snot out of anyone, and then you might actually deserve what you have. Wait, hold on, Sakura interrupted. I don't want to be a brawler. Ninjutsu and genjutsu are perfectly acceptable for moving up in the world. I outmaneuvered Shikamaru in that fight, and I outsmarted that snobby Neji all on my own. No hints, no help, no anything. And if there's anything else in life I want going forward, I'll just reach for it myself and claim that too. Even cute boys. Suddenly pulled out of the meditation, Sakura collapses from exhaustion, glimpsing Killer Bee above her as vision fades. Waking up beside the pool, Sakura asks what happened, and Killer Bee tells her that she must have barely had enough chakra to survive it. Excited that someone else has seen what he has, because Motoi absolutely refuses to take part, Bee is now pushing the boundaries and insists Sakura go into the temple with him. But it's at this point that Motoi absolutely refuses. After all, they think the temple was built by the fabled Sage of Six Paths, based on how it was made and where. Of course, they can't be sure of this, since he was from, millennia past. However, Motoi tells her that it is in fact divine ground that only Jinchuriki should ever tread. As it is, few have the chakra control or fortitude to survive the meditation process, and she pulled out of that via sheer miracle. And so the training continues, and Sakura wonders why Killer Bee was so intent on her doing the meditation. But now, she also felt very self-aware whenever she donned Naruto's jacket, and on more than one occasions, Bee asked her why she was so red. Huh, Killer Bee muttered, pulling out a notepad and pen as he often did for his raps. Check it! Meditate at the falls, unlock that strength, and break down your walls! What's holding you back? Time to let it go! Feel the power rise, let your true self show! I'm not sure that was my true self, Sakura chuckled, shaking her head at Bee. Sometimes you gain, sometimes you learn. I gotta write that one down. Bee slowed down as his pen quickened. Suppressing those weaknesses, watch how you burn. Through the trial you face, you'll come out strong. No one's leaving weaker, it's where you belong. It's just part of my training? Sakura wondered, watching him write furiously. Then why am I getting special treatment? Motoi said no one else other than Jinchuriki should have taken that trial. My man Motoi makes the cloud follow the rules, but he don't know how to tell an outsider what to do. Bee explained, scratching his chin. So dive deep, let your spirit flow, harness the strength, let your confidence grow. Like a ninja in the night ready to attack with the falls behind you, ain't no looking back. Is there more strength that can be gained from inside the waterfall? Inside the temple? Sakura asks, raising an eyebrow at his wording. Ah! Stopping quickly, B grumbles and shakes his head. Killer B is kind of rebellious if it means Sakura can break the rules, but anything that would involve him directly breaking the rules, he was surprisingly straight-laced about. He refused to comment further on the innards of the falls, but at her mentioning the temple, B got the brilliant idea that he would distract Motoi and open a window of opportunity for Sakura to enter the temple. The idea of walking the same ground as the father of chakra, Sakura could hardly say no. It would be one of the greatest historical sites in the known world. Creating genjutsu of small fires throughout many of the cabins littered across the island turtle, Killer Bee notified Motoi and watched him launch to work extinguishing the elusive flames. In this moment, Sakura slipped through the falls with Killer Bee following closely behind. After all, as a Jinchuriki, he was free to come and go in this space as he wished. He told her that Hachi, or the eight-tailed beast, wasn't a fan of this space, but never elaborated as to why, so he rarely entered here without reason. They had only walked to the entrance of the temple before shouting came from the waterfall, angry shouting from Motoi. "Why is it so hard to breathe here?" Sakura gasped, swallowing as if to clear her throat of an obstruction, but found no relief. "What do you mean?" B asked with a crooked head, truly confused by her conundrum. Maybe it was more than tradition why only Jinchuriki were allowed in here. "B!" Motoi shouted again, refusing to step foot himself into the temple, but growing in fury nonetheless. Ensuring that he'll continue the charade with Motoi, B turns and runs back to the entrance to buy time. Now alone, Sakura massages her throat and wonders why it's so stifling here. She looks up at the doors of the temple's official entrance and sees a man staring down at her. Curiously, she approaches him, but finds that her voice is completely stifled as she approaches. The old man is dressed in strange white garb, with several ceremonial symbols adorned across it. His eyes are purple and have several rings beyond the simple iris that any normal person has. 3 of these rings also sport tomo, much like the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan, and there are stark veins rippling along his temples, identical to the Byakugan of the Yuka clan. Squinting, Sakura wonders who the man is and wishes she can speak. If she didn't know better, she'd guess that he was in fact the Sage of Six Paths. "Your chakra control is something to be admired, child," the man told her, and she felt the weight lift from her and her voice returned. "You don't even have that much to work with." Clearing her throat, Sakura raises a questioning eyebrow about how the man could tell just by looking at her. "However, it is just such a quality that I have been looking for," the man muttered with a curling smile. "I wish I could leave this place, but I'd evaporate like a puff of steam if I left its bounds." Sakura looked back towards B and Motoi, and the Sage of Six Paths look-alike continues. "I can only make myself visible periodically, and I've no interest in speaking to these Jinchuriki, as they call themselves." "Then what makes me so special?" Sakura asked, since surely a Jinchuriki would be way more important to this apparent ghost of the father of chakra. "You're the only normal person I've met," the old man chuckled kindly. "In life, I latched a sliver of my spirit to this temple, in hopes to meet someone like you should the world ever be brought to its knees by war. However, the people who found this island have only ever sent Jinchuriki in here, and I cannot work with them." "You placed yourself here as a failsafe against war?" Sakura asked, recognizing the absurdity of the claim. She could believe the chakra spirit part, considering the ever-complex types of jutsu that exist, but that a spirit bound to one place could stop the world's wars was a little tragic in concept. "All the tailed beasts that are spread out across the world are my creations," the man told her, which, of course if true, proved that he was in fact the Sage of Six Paths, since who else could create those monsters? They're slices of my own power that I splintered from myself. I wait here for them to return to me, but if forced, such as via these Jinchuriki, that will not do. They must come free and of their own will. The world of man can be great and loving and welcoming to them, but equally it can be savage, violent, and hateful as well. This place was established so that if any of the tailed beasts ever wished to return to me, they could.
Do the tailed beasts despise their creator so much that they refuse to return?
Sakura asked, curious as to why they were all still in the world.
There are so many factors that keep them at bay,
the sage explained, shaking his head sorrowfully.
Not the least of which they don't know where this is. I've already learned through glimpses that people have been selected through the generations to act as prisons for my children.
To be fair, Sakura interjected, that's only been happening since Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. They came up with the idea of Jinchuriki.
No, child, the sage answered. That's been happening for centuries. These two people you've mentioned only revived the custom, and whenever my children die, their memories fragment, shatter, and in some cases, they permanently lose it.
I don't think any of the tailed beasts have died, Sakura told him. That would make news everywhere.
Frowning at Sakura, the man steps forward and thrusts a hand square into her chest, taking her breath away yet again. Stumbling backwards, Sakura hugs her chest as she struggles for breath.
Child, you must let my children know of this place, he commands as he watches her suffer. Once you meet each of them, return here. You will understand why before that day comes.
Why? Sakura struggles before her breath lets out, and she collapses at his feet. Waking in one of the many cabins that Bee had pretended to burn down, Sakura wonders how long she was out, and it takes some minutes for her to remember how she came to be where she was. Putting a hand on her chest, Sakura wonders if that man left a bruise and checks. She finds a swirling of 9 tomo, like a tattoo imprinted on her chest. Zipping up her gown, she decides to pretend as though nothing happened, until she can come to terms with what might be a unique mission set out by the Sage of Six Paths himself. Just as she zips up, Motoi crashes into her cabin with Bee holding onto his leg in a vain attempt to hold back his wrath.
Girl! Motoi shouts. You have broken the cardinal rule of this island turtle.
I know. Curiosity got the better of me. I'm so sorry, Motoi.
Sakura immediately repented, folding onto her knees and expressing her apologies. She wasn't actually that sorry, but she also wasn't sure if he would actually kick her off the island turtle for this transgression.
Bee, get off of me!
Motoi shouted as Bee's antics diffused some of his anger towards Sakura.
Girl, I will let you stay here, but there are no more chances. You must not break the rules again.
That's completely understandable,
Sakura shouted into the floor. I agree with the terms, and I won't break any more rules.
You're... Motoi stammered. You're much more understanding than Bee.
Wordlessly accepting her apology, Motoi went on to allow her continued training with Killer Bee. And it really was a type of training she didn't expect. All this time, she had been learning guidance from Kurenai-sensei and learned some specialized techniques from Lord Jiraiya. But Killer Bee plunged her into the thick of it, where she required the use of genjutsu, taijutsu, and ninjutsu together to get through their training exercises without much injury. She always prided herself for her chakra control, and this kind of training forced her to be fast on her feet, fast with her mind, and maintain absolute control over how much chakra she spared for every single technique. But since the visit with the ghost, Sakura had been feeling a strangeness from Killer Bee, and wondered if the sage had given her something more than just a mark on her skin. Sakura had been on the island for long enough now that the beasts were beginning to learn they couldn't beat her up either.
And so the only opponent that could reliably give Sakura a run for her money was Killer Bee himself. And if it wasn't obvious already, as trained as she was, Killer Bee easily eclipsed her. But fighting him was no different in principle than fighting any other ninja. He used jutsu with a variety of hand seals that she could read to surmise his next mode of attack. Despite being stronger and faster than her, Killer Bee was slowly starting to recognize that Sakura was adapting past a human opponent. To keep her on her toes, he decided to let Hachi have a go. There were of course rules in place, and Hachi knew them very well. This was an insane experience to face off against a full-tailed beast that didn't want to savagely destroy everything. Sakura spent much of the fight's start staring in awe at the Eight Tails' majesty, blown away that a Jinchuriki could have such strong relations with their tailed beast. If Ino or Naruto ever reached this point with their beasts, Konoha wouldn't need an army. With the most minor of quivering from one of its tentacles, Hachi blasted out a stream of high-pressure water at Sakura to break her from her stupor. Narrowly dodging the blast, Sakura wondered how she was meant to fight against such a monster, unless it was meant to be a time-limited fight. Survival until the end, then. Using various clones to attempt to confuse her location, Sakura was dismayed when Hachi turned to electricity and triggered all the now wet ground surrounding her. As she leapt to safety, all her clones diminished to nothingness. But now airborne, she was indefensible as one of Hachi's tentacles swung around and smacked into her. Hachi was having trouble regulating its strength against her, and this strike had absolutely no impact to it. Upon contact, though, Sakura felt the same pain in her chest that she felt from when the sage hit her. Falling to the ground below, she struggled to get up, fatigued by the strange feeling. As Hachi panicked that he may have swung a little bit too hard, Sakura lifted her hands and began weaving a counter-offensive jutsu. But this jutsu she wove was completely unfamiliar to her. Simultaneously, she knew what she was doing and had no idea what was about to happen. Wordlessly finishing the jutsu, Sakura feels a swell of chakra and watches as a russet-brown chakra became visible in her hands. As she looks at the chakra, the jutsu executes and raises spikes of ink out of the ground in a straight line towards Hachi, puncturing into its underside. Howling from surprise, Hachi looked down and watches the spikes of ink lose shape and become puddles on the ground. Immediately losing form, Hachi withdrew into B and he walked carefully towards Sakura. "How'd you do that?" he asked, but when he opened his mouth to continue, something compelled him to stop there. "I'm not feeling so well," Sakura lied to him. If anything, she felt better than ever, but she had no idea what caused this explosion of energy. Massaging her chest where the mark was, Sakura wasn't sure, but she felt as though there was a second presence of chakra inside her. Successfully hiding this revelation away from Bee and Motoi, Sakura continued onwards with training until the day finally came. A ferry arrived ahead of schedule with the express interest of recruiting Killer Bee aid in the war effort. Enough time had passed since her transgression with the temple that Motoi trusted Sakura not to break the rules again, so he left with Bee, only to see him off at the mainland before he would return alone. Sakura stayed behind, only because Motoi didn't want anyone finding out that a random leaf kunoichi somehow found their way to the turtle. He told her they would drop her off somewhere else less conspicuous. She enjoyed then a couple weeks of relaxation, the first break she had since arriving to the island turtle before thinking about leaving for Konoha herself. Still in the thought process of what route she might take, Sakura returned to the shore where she initially arrived, only to look out and see Naruto Uzumaki, of all people, collapsing into the waters beside the turtle. It was a small task to rescue him from the depths and return him to the cabin she had been using. More self-conscious than ever for some reason, Sakura tucked his jacket away so he would not see it when he regained consciousness. She wondered how it was that he found his way to the island Turtle in just the exact same manner than she did. Maybe it was destiny, fate that they found it in the same way. Blushing at the idea, Sakura almost had to slap herself that she kept romanticizing the affair. And when he finally gained consciousness, she resolved herself to treat him to the island in the same way that B treated her to the island. However, he felt unenthusiastic and uninterested in everything happening, and she thought if they shared their collective journeys up to this point, he would relax and open up a bit more. But what he told her didn't quite explain why he was so low energy here. Introduced to a new human to challenge, the beasts of the jungle launched themselves at Naruto, but Sakura, not B, stood in their way and scared them off herself. This brought a strange level of joy and pride to Sakura. She knew Naruto didn't need the protection, but that the beasts respected her like this was just awesome. After a couple days, she went on to introduce Naruto to the training she'd been doing there. Sakura thought she surprised him when she outmaneuvered him during sparring, but he just didn't seem engaged enough, even still. So she thought maybe if he meditated at the Waterfall of Truth, he'd gain some introspection and his mood might change for the better. And even though he was a Jinchuriki, she felt like he needed a bit more training to keep in line with how Motoi treated her before meditation. And it was in this training that it happened again. Naruto landed a fierce blow in a lapse of judgment, and though the punch was enough to wind Sakura, it wasn't enough to injure her. Nonetheless, she felt a sudden shot of pain score into her chest, and her reaction to his attack was a counter-offensive jutsu that she had never done before. It took actual willpower to stop the jutsu before completion, and yet again, Sakura felt her chest and felt this time a third chakra source. Each additional chakra source was weak, even compared to her own original chakra, but present all the same, and quite possibly changing something in her. "They need to come willingly." The sage's words repeat in her head, and she realized that even when trapped within Jinchuriki, she can interact in some strange way with the tailed beasts. Fueled now to explore this new precedent, Sakura decides she needs to seek out an additional tailed beast. She's only aware of the location of one tailed beast, so she decides that's where she needs to ultimately go. Her mission to return home has been given a caveat to chance meeting another tailed beast. When she finally brought Naruto to the Falls of Truth, something unexpected happened. Motoi had told her that the longest anyone spent there was an hour, but Naruto spent the entire day sitting in the same spot in silence. Anxious because of her growing concern how she might be involved with tailed beasts now, Sakura decides to go to bed and then the next day tell Naruto she's taking off. However, the next day she returned to the falls only to find him still sitting in the exact same position. She wondered if she should shake him from this meditation, but given the nature of the falls, was afraid of what may happen as a result. Simultaneously, she couldn't just wait around for him to come out of it with this weight on her shoulders, feeling like it was progressively getting heavier. She knew Motoi would arrive soon and be able to guide Naruto in whichever way. Apologizing silently for abandoning Naruto to a task that she set him upon, Sakura finally pulled the trigger and set out to find the five-tailed beast within the Dreadlands. That beast was covered by the entire invasion force due to its ultimate proximity and feral nature. It wasn't every day Sakura heard about free-tailed beasts that owned entire swaths of land. It was very difficult to forget. As she passed through Iwa, she found that the sound ninja that had terrorized her and Ino before had now fully settled into the land that once belonged to the Land of Earth. So she kept a wide berth from what she surmised was their territory as she made her way to the Dreadlands. Cresting the hill that she believes is the border between Iwa and the Dreadlands, Sakura finds herself face to face with the five-tailed beast as it's about to unleash another one of its genjutsu breaths across the countryside. At her sudden proximity, she couldn't believe how large the beast was compared to her. Though she had seen Hachi transformed, she figured it must have been taking a smaller form to fit properly on the island turtle. If not, then it was far smaller than the five-tailed beast. If this monster did not have the vaguely similar body shape as a horse, its sheer size could cause others to mistake it for a mountain. The beast didn't even notice her as it continuously breathed in, generating gale forces behind Sakura and pulling her towards it. Bracing herself, Sakura looked up at the beast and wondered how she should get its attention without attacking it or without it attacking her. Just as before, just as every time, Sakura felt a sudden lurching feeling in her chest. Seizing its great breath, the five-tail's eyes suddenly dropped and focused in on Sakura. It leaned in close and silently studied her before suddenly flinching, snapping its head back, and shaking as if it had gotten a nose full of pepper. After some seconds pass, it snarls at her, spins, and kicks a wall of dirt at her before dashing away. Bewildered by its reaction, Sakura is confused anew by what the ghost wanted her to do. She doesn't feel this additional presence of chakra this time, which is what she came to assume the sage ghost wanted of her. Disappointed by this turn of events, she decides that maybe it would be better to seek the counsel of someone far smarter than her. Following her interactions with Killer Bee and Naruto, Sakura was sure something would happen. On the flip side, something did happen. The beast not only noticed her, but it didn't kill her. Surely there was something more to that. It didn't even breathe its steam. It was on her return to Konoha that Sakura came across several traders fleeing, as fast as they could with their cargo abandoned because of a single pale man chasing them. Though Sakura had no interest in getting into a random fight, she wasn't about to leave these innocent traders to their fate. Intercepting the pursuer, Sakura tells him that if he wants to terrorize someone, he can try his hand at her. "Leave Kunoichi, it's almost a waste of time." The man laughs, shaking his head at her, with a second head behind him also shaking alongside. "I'm Sakon, and one of the top brass of the sound. You'd better get on your knees and apologize for standing in my way." "Your rank is meaningless to me," Sakura shrugged, putting a hand on her hip and deciding to wait for him to stop talking. "Through Lord Orochimaru's tutelage over the years, I've yet to meet an opponent that can match me." "Lord Orochimaru died," Sakura told him. "I saw it happen. You can't trick me." "What?" The man stopped. "You saw Lord Orochimaru fall in battle?" Instead of remaining flustered at the news, the man just charged her. Sakura normally would have surveyed the area before their clash, but they were fighting in a barren landscape, with naught but rock and sand around them. Trying to punch Sakura, Sakon is immediately countered when Sakura catches his punch and holds a tight grip with it. As they twirl, locked together by her unbreaking grapple, Sakon turns back and a second set of arms emerged to weave jutsu for him. Noting the tiger seal, an offensive seal, Sakura prepared a counter-offensive, weaving hand seals with her single free hand. "Earth-style mudwall jutsu!" Sakura shouted, barely aware herself of what she was weaving. As the two jutsu clashed, Sakura wondered what it was that allowed her to perform a jutsu single-handed. She had done it at the Chunin exams as well, but rarely had the chance to practice and see if that was a one-off accident. And just now, as she had done before, she performed it without really paying attention to the effort. As the mud wall cracks and shatters, Sakon follows his fireball up with a three-armed punch, forcing Sakura to release him and guard against the strike. Another combination of only vaguely familiar hand seals before Sakura released that same wall of ink spikes at Sakon. Clearly he was not expecting it either, and only barely dodged out of their way, though Sakura noted that there was no second head on his back anymore. The hard ground betrayed his attempt at a surprise attack as this mysterious second body stamped towards her from behind. Twisting on the spot, Sakura released Water Style Ink Blot Jutsu! This time, it was a jutsu taught by Killer Bee to help supplement her genjutsu. Ink Blot Jutsu doubled as a literal blinding attack, as well as a means of hiding her presence in the ensuing cloud of ink. Noticing a fluctuation through the black ink, Sakura raises her leg just in time to block Sakon's attack through the illusion. Refusing to give her a moment's reprieve, Sakon pressed forward while his other half attempted to shed the ink from his face. Emerging from the ink together, locked in taijutsu, Sakura was forced on the defensive. Sakon was just as fast as she was, but much stronger, and she had to decisively guard his strikes to avoid injury. On the flip side, he wasn't made of metal, and grunted whenever she landed any kind of blow. Regardless, Sakura would have preferred being at medium range casting ninjutsu or genjutsu instead of this forced melee. And she knew he was buying time for the other one to be good for combat again. She would have to try her hand at a single-handed jutsu once again, given how little space he was giving her to mount any other strategy. Hand seals are performed and completed with two hands, so Sakura rarely considered the alien feeling of only performing half a hand seal. But she needed to maintain her chakra concentration for the jutsu as well as continue fighting. "Fire style!" she shouted to Sakon's confusion. "Fireball jutsu!" Though he attempted to dodge, only the slightest fire spat from her lips before relinquishing into a puff of smoke. Now, with both hands freed though, Sakura performed as fast a jutsu as she could, altering it slightly when she saw the second body dashing towards Sakon. "Fire style! Scorching Fisher!" Sakura shouted, slamming both hands into the ground for a hissing fire to launch up from beneath the ground and form a barrier between Sakon and his other half. With the two divided now, Sakura charged the other one, who proved far slower as Sakura pummeled it and threw it to the ground. Falling from a standing position, Sakura drove her elbow into his face, causing an explosion of blood. As Sakon came to her, Sakura was already off the man and rolling to safety. "Brother!" Sakon screeched. "What has she done to you?" "And I've got more," Sakura fibbed. She did have a little bit more, but her range of jutsu felt pretty vanilla versus Sakon's strange fusion ability with his brother. He could still pull a surprise on her, while she didn't feel like she had any surprises other than a few more of B's taught abilities. But his abilities weren't the kind of offensive marvels that could turn a fight to her favor. "Forget my brother, I'm your opponent!" Sakon shouted, again closing the distance for a continued brawl. This time though, Sakon sought control of her, locking her own wrists as they attempted to exchange blows. But unlike before, where Sakura tried to slow him down so she could throw a jutsu, Sakon had a different tactic in mind. As if him and his brother fusing wasn't enough, Sakon suddenly latched onto her as their skin melded together, and he became a literal part of Sakura. "If you refuse to go down, I'll take you out with my foolproof method! Ha 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 ha!" Sakon laughed maniacally as his entire being sunk into her. First and foremost, Sakura was extremely grossed out, like when you swat a particularly plump fly and its guts squirt across your hand. But after that, she also felt a horrible sense of shattered security when she looked at her own arm where he entered and saw his face stretched along it. "All it takes from here is playing your organs like a musical instrument," Sakon threatened, and Sakura preemptively flinched against his impending internal attack. But nothing came. His face disappeared from her arm, but she felt nothing else abnormal. Of her two additional chakra sources, she felt the crimson one well up suddenly and begin burning beneath her skin. "Ah! No!" Sakon groaned, suddenly ejecting in one fell swoop from Sakura's body. "What are you?" Hands forming together, control taken from her, Sakura can only watch as yet another mysterious jutsu starts being formed. Even with Sakon outside of her, will she just keep having her control taken from her by these unknown forces? As this second wordless jutsu finishes, red boiling liquid generates from her squeezed hands, pouring over, popping and spraying along the ground around her. Though it did not feel like anything but water to Sakura, upon contact with Sakon's body, it set to burning across him. Writhing in pain from the cruel jutsu, Sakon weakly tries to crawl away from Sakura. Attempting to sound strong, Sakura leans over him and asks, "While you're here, mind telling me where I can find Ino?"
Who the heck is that?
Sakon hissed, furiously swiping at the ceaseless crimson liquid. Smirking, Sakura straightens and decides that enough's enough. She needs to go home. Waking up in the hospital, Sakura had been carried to a spare bed to recover after having healed Jiraiya. She wasn't feeling weak at all, so she climbed out of the bed and returned to wandering the halls. Especially considering she had just revived Jiraiya, she wanted to go see him and meaningfully sit by his side. As she approached his room, though, she came upon another within which she heard raised voices. In all the lofty goals of confronting the Hokage, the idea that two people might be having a smaller squabble really grounded Sakura. Between her encounter with the Sage of Six Paths' ghost and all the tailed beasts she had resonated with since, Sakura didn't really think she'd be returning to normalcy where she could argue with someone about where to eat or some such. But upon further concentration, Sakura realized the voices in the room came from Lady Tsunade's own protege, both Shizune and Kabuto. "What you're suggesting is heresy, Kabuto!" Shizune urged, more of a warning than a flat-out accusation. "Continue along these lines and you could be branded a traitor. Look, if Lord Jiraiya is awake at last, then maybe we should find a way to bring back Lord Orochimaru," Kabuto argued, still conscious of where he was and attempting to whisper it, though Sakura could still overhear. "Something like the impure resurrection jutsu isn't permanent, and it's extremely unethical," Shizune insisted. "And there's no other jutsu that could possibly match what that does." "Blast it, Shizune! There should be something better than that. Of all the things Lord Orochimaru was known for, he was first and foremost a scientist who researched various previously unknown jutsu. You don't think he wouldn't have found something that could bring people back?" Kabuto ranted, his voice laced with frustration. "No, absolutely not," Shizune refused again. "And if you dare try anything so sinister, I won't have a choice. I'll have to tell Lady Tsunade." Quickly stepping out of sight as their arguing grew quiet, Sakura heard the door's room slam open as Kabuto stormed out and leapt out a nearby window to escape the hospital and get away from Shizune. And that's the end of today's episode. Just as with Naruto and Sasuke before that, Sakura had a whole lot of important interactions here. Why did the Sage of Six Paths' ghost choose her? And for what did he choose her? Even Sakura herself is unclear on what his actual wishes for her are. She seems to be picking up other chakra. But for why? What does it all mean? I tried to be cryptic with it, but if some of you figure it out, then, well, bravo, honestly. There's very little I can say here without giving a lot away, so I'll just stop talking about that. Finally, a bit of a switch up for a conclusion to these episodes with Shizune and Kabuto. I wonder if that disagreement will lead anywhere. For now, I'll leave you with the now staple riddle for next episode, and see you all in the Discord for discussion. In a place where trust has turned to stone, two paths diverge, yet both feel alone. Once united in purpose, now torn apart, a clash of ideals, a fracture of heart. Will steel meet steel in a storm of might, or can whispers of reason calm the night? In shadows and echoes the truth lies concealed, what fate awaits when the past it revealed. A guardian's burden, a hero's plea, what choice will unfold? Will it be war or harmony? In the dance of resolve where hopes intertwine, will you find peace or a battle divine? That's all for today. The sky's the limit!